Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. It's such a pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Maybe you could just kick off with a brief introduction to this incredible film. For people who don't know anything about it, what can they expect when they watch You Resemble Me?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me. And You Resemble Me is a film about a woman who, it starts with her as a young girl and her relationship to her sister and how they had this really tight-knit bond and everything was broken around them, but they still had each other. And what happens when they're torn apart, the different kind of lanes of identity go down, especially, the older sister, Hasna. Everything kind of culminates with a choice she makes that captures the world's attention and shocks the world.
And there's so many fascinating kind of layers and elements to this film. The story that it's based on, your journey, I guess, from being a journalist, reporting on this story to then making your debut feature, and then also the kind of experimental form that it takes, and these kind of really interesting decisions you've made as a filmmaker. Maybe you can just start with a little bit of the background. How you were reporting actually on this story as a journalist for Vice, when you've and that was your kind of way into this, and hearing this woman, that video where she's shouting out and kind of how it dismantled everyone's initial sort of impression of what was going on there. So tell us the journey to making the film.
So I think I have to preface this by saying that I really believe that stories choose people. People don't choose stories. And I consider myself a bit of a recovering journalist. I used to work for CNN and the New York Times and Vice. And, I grew up like obsessed with Christiane Amanpour. I still am. I love her. But I really I saw myself as being on the field and reporting, from kind of these points where history was unfolding. And so, I found myself in France, in Saint Denis specifically, where this bomb went off after the police had closed in on the hiding spot of Hasna, who had previously been known as the cowgirl of the hood, but all of a sudden was at the center of the story and was, the acclaimed first female suicide bomber of Europe. And she was hiding out in that apartment with her boyfriend slash cousin, who was the mastermind of the Paris attacks, that rocked, the restaurant, the restaurants and the stadium, and in November 13, 2015. So I reported, just like everyone else, that she was the first female suicide bomber, which was fake news. And I felt so terrible that I perpetuated a fake headline that I went and I found her family. And her mother turned away every single journalist or camera that approached her, but let me into their home because she felt like I resembled her daughter.
And of course, you've kind of, it's this sort of um, mix, if you like, of documentary form and fictionalized form, but it's very much informed by, I think you had hours and hours of interviews with the family, with her circle. So what was that experience like, and what did you glean from, and having to, I guess, gain the trust of those people, as you said, in order to get them to elicit their story?
Yeah, it took years of my life. I mean, I was on this journey on and off. We include like even this part of it, which is like the release, which is also takes quite a bit of work. It's like 7 years, and it was a winding road of ups and downs. And it started with me reporting this fake headline, gaining access to the family, them recognizing something in me that resembled her, and me seeing something in me that resembled, like me seeing myself in her, seeing that this actually wasn't a story about terrorism or France, but it transcended all of that. It was about a woman who was deeply searching for a sense of self, and was struggling to find her place in society, and felt caught between worlds and cultures and religions, and that's something that I can relate to. I'm Egyptian, I'm Muslim, I'm American, and I think trying to find the harmony between like a multi-hyphenated identity sometimes feels like you're walking on eggshells, and there's fragility there. And I don't think you even have to be Muslim to feel sometimes the pressure of the human experience, and of just trying to feel like you belong in this world. You know, I think that's a daily struggle and exercise for to varying degrees for all of us. So that was really the impetus for me making for making this film. That was the driving force, and I felt there was something within myself that I almost had to like uncoil through telling her story. And I think that's the power of art, that allows you to kind of mirror between yourself, consciously or subconsciously, with that story that you're obsessed with and that you're kind of swimming deep in the waters of it, and to hopefully illuminate something about the human condition, not only for yourself and the subject, but for humankind, hopefully, you know.
And I guess because you've come kind of from a journalistic world, this easily could have been perhaps more of a kind of conventional, straight up documentary with talking heads, you know, just sort of kind of going through the elements of her story. But, you know, at what point did you decide to kind of do this mix? And, you know, the first half very much like focusing on, you know, the childhood and kind of a more fictionalized story. And as we said, you know, experimental, bringing in the different faces with deep fake and kind of, I guess, using the tools of fiction filmmaking to illuminate how fragmented her identity was.
So I think that every filmmaker needs to really ask themselves, what is the truest essence of the story that I'm telling? You know, if it's really just about one thing that I'm trying to express, and for what is it? And for me, it was that this woman had a fractured identity, that that she didn't know who she was, that the toll of shape shifting and code switching, and you know, left her in such a fragile place where she was like so susceptible to brainwashing, and that's how she ended up in that headline, you know, notorious to all of us, you know, as this fake first female suicide bomber of the world. And so the structure of the film was very intentionally one where like there was like a schizophrenia of self, and like the schizophrenia kept kind of increasing. Like in the first act, like, you know, everything is broken around those two girls, but they have each other, you know? And once they're torn apart, Hasna fractures and she loses a sense of who she is. And then once that bomb goes off, we kind of like, we're catapulted in a whole new kind of gritty reality of the documentary, which is like the truth of it all, meeting her real family and understanding that this is real and that we're all complicit in a way, you know, because I believe like the bigger the crime, the more we have to ask ourselves, how did this person fall through the cracks? And we also have to recognize that, you know, this is a product of our society.
And I guess, you know, was part of the driving force as well. I mean, I think it's her sister that says that even she never felt like she really knew her own sister, that she was kind of somehow a mystery. So I guess in trying to create this character, it's maybe elusive in lots of ways. Did you ever feel like you fully understood what had happened, what her journey had been? Or is it kind of, you have this patchwork and everyone will have to kind of interpret their own version of it?
I think it's the latter. I think that even though I spent 7 years, over 360 hours of interviews, I really contemplated and reflected before expressing anything on this story, because I know it's sacred ground. People died. You know, this is a real story. And yet, even though there was such a visceral sense of who Hasna was, like I really felt who she was inside my body, really. You know what I mean? It was clear, and I could pull it out of actors, you know, and create the right world for it. Still, there remains something that is unknowable about her, that is mysterious, even to the people who knew her, even to her own family. And I think that that's also part of the reason why I chose to kind of cast 3 women to step into her shoes, because that mystery remains, and also, you know, I think she was struggling with a mental health crisis. Like I think that she really didn't know who she was, and that was a central issue of why she ended up making such a poor decision.
And I think there's also this thread that runs through it of, you know, the idea that in order to survive, people perhaps have to shapeshift in a way or become what I think other people want them to be. And it's that disassociation which can then lead to problems. So somehow, you know, that's the thing that kind of needs to be broken down. Like, why do we need people to assimilate? Why do we need people to sort of change who they are? And you know, if we allow people to be free to be who they are, then maybe you wouldn't end up in these situations.
1,000,000%. I think you just nailed it. Dissociation is a trauma response. It's like, you know, when you learn from a young age that it's safer to leave your body than to be present in order to survive. And I think that as an adult, it becomes a coping mechanism. And so whenever you feel unsafe by your surroundings, and you feel like you can't be fully, like you can't really express yourself, or else you'll risk human connection, you leave your body, go numb, pretend to be someone else, only to kind of feel a deepening emptiness within yourself. And I think that that leads to a fragility that can be dangerous to yourself and others, you know? And so I think that, like, I think this film is also pointing to the fact that, like, everyone is struggling with something that you don't know. We all are putting on these strong faces and just like powering through or trying to. And the truth is, to varying degrees, we are bound by our fragility, actually. So kindness is important, you know, and it really is, because it can save someone's life. It really, like, taking, you know, having the intuition to first of all, for yourself, to allow yourself to not compromise and shapeshift when you feel unsafe, and to kind of root into, like, no, I'm going to choose to be me, you know, and I'm going to think it's safe to do so. That's a daily practice, right? But also, I think for others to give, you know, to afford compassion and kindness, instead of just kind of like quickly like reacting or condemning or judging or, you know, banishing. Like, I think that kind of behavior just leads people to get further, to kind of like go far out into the sea, almost beyond reach, and sometimes come back and grab our attention in the worst way possible, you know? So.
And I have to make mention of your incredible cast. I mean, these two young girls, you know, that open the film, because I believe they're real life sisters, aren't they? But this is so incredibly naturalistic, you know. It almost feels like that might be a documentary, and they're not acting, because it feels so real, especially, you know, with the handheld camera, and it feels very up close and personal. And then of course when we move into, you know, kind of the adult Hasna, I mean, she's absolutely phenomenal. And then you're one of the faces as well, and there's another actress who kind of cuts in too. So how did you find these incredible, you know, young girls and these older women too?
You know, I think that filmmaking is very intuitive, especially with the casting, right? You have to really understand who can bring this story to life. And I think, you know, I met those girls on the first day of casting. They were the last ones to show up. And I instantly knew they were our young Miriam and Hasna. And as soon as I found them, I was like, okay, wow, now we have something to point the camera at, you know? Now we have a film. And that's the power of a great performance and a great actor, you know, whether they're trained or untrained. It's that there's something compelling, visceral, and true that they are expressing, and that they're willing to go on this ride with you to really bring like the depths of this character to life. And with the girls, they are fighters, you know what I mean? Like, they've never acted before, but they gave it their all. And I really pray that they continue to soar and succeed as artists, because they're stars.
And another element that, you know, that comes up in different moments is about this idea of having to kind of change the way you look. And, you know, it's, you know, when she goes to the sort of foster home, and they just seem way more interested in getting her to fit in with the French culture, straightening her hair, like feeding her pork. And then also when we see Mariam at the end saying that she actually had to have surgery. And it's really interesting to kind of highlight it in that very kind of specific way, because perhaps, you know, it's not something that you think about, like how much, you know, the way you look even is instantly, you know, a basis for people to kind of judge you, and you're not accepted. So is that something that was also important for you to bring out?
100%. Yeah, I mean, you're really nailing all. You got the film through and through. You really did, picking up on all the nuances of it. But absolutely, I think that in the effort to integrate, you know, and I've experienced this personally, you straighten your hair, if in France I see like you make your accent look more posh, less immigrant, um uh sure, drink, eat pork, whatever, just to and those are by the way, I'm not saying this to shame any of these choices. These are personal choices, and I think also that the point of the film is to say, like, let Muslim women exist on their own terms. Like, if it can be, a Muslim woman can show up with any varying combination of choices, and how she dresses, or hijab, no hijab, drinks, doesn't drink, pork, it's her choice, right? But just let her be her. If it so long as it's coming from her authentically, that's fine, but when it's pressed on someone, and as a means of like integrating and fitting in, that's where it's oppressive, and that's where actually there's going to be a price to pay, because it wasn't that person's personal choice, and it leaves a person feeling that like they're like forced into that. It's also like a false promise, because you can straighten your hair, you can eat pork, you can drink alcohol, you can be the wildest girl out there, but still be black, or still be Muslim, or still be Arab, and at the end of the day you're still going to be seen as that thing. You know what I mean? Like, you can't wash away where you come from or who you are. You have to, in a healthy way, be able to integrate it on your own terms.
And yeah, I think I'm out of time, but I guess just to finish up, what do you hope the impact of your film will be? Because there's so many moments that are really difficult to watch, right from the way they're kind of treated by their mother, and the young girls on the street, and through to the way Hasna is treated by like men and things like that. So many hard moments to watch, but there's something about that shocking nature of it that also humanizes the story, and hopefully gets people to react in a way that's different when they just read headlines in a much more detached way.
I hope that people leave with softer hearts towards themselves, and towards others, to be honest, and to realize that whoever they are blaming is also a human being, with a complicated story. And that's not to absolve them of any accountability, but that's to lift the burden of hate or anger or rage that you've pointed towards someone that you think, or a person or a group that you've claimed to be the problem, because behind that judgment is a story. And if they say that if you knew everyone's story, if you really understood how everyone came into this world, and you witnessed every day of their life and their childhood, you would fall in love with them, because you understand that they are actually trying their best. And that of course, a statement like that needs to be held in balance, because there's responsibility for the actions we take. But I think context to how and why is important, because it illuminates to us how we can deal with the problems we face as a society better, on a human level.
And can you quickly tell us what you might be working on next? Do you already have your next projects?
Many exciting things, so stay tuned.
Well, thank you.
I won't say specifically, but yeah, things coming for sure.
Well, watch this space. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with us, and really
thank you
for everyone to have the opportunity to see this really powerful film in cinemas, I believe, from this Friday. Next Friday, I think so.
Yes, this Friday.
Lovely to chat to you. Have a really nice evening.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I love that you understood like really the ins and outs and like the spirit of the film. I was like, wow, okay, she's hitting all of it. Like,
no,
she really got it, So I was like, okay, here we go.
Oh, so nice to chat to you. Thanks so much. See you. Bye.
Take care.